Neptune's transits into a new sign, they signal very important, profound changes, but those changes that it brings about are very gradual and they're very subtle in what they do to the human condition and what they're doing to society. So at the end of March, Neptune moved into the sign of Aries. And Neptune is going to retrograde, go back into the sign of Pisces in October, and it's going to stay in Pisces, and then it's going to move back into Aries in January of 2026, and it's going to be there for 14 years until March 2039. So this is going to be the first of 3 videos that I'm going to be doing about this transit, or Neptune transits, and in this video I'm going to be describing what Neptune is doing to a sign and how it's affecting people and affecting society on a large scale, but also on a personal scale. So what is Neptune actually up to as it's transiting, and what is it doing? So in the second video, I'm going to be talking about the period between 2011 and 2025 when Neptune was in Pisces and the major changes that happened during that epoch of time. And then in the third final video, I'm going to be talking about what we can expect with Neptune in Aries. It's going to be a big difference than what we are expecting, what happened when Neptune was in Pisces. So that third video will be more about predictions about what we're going to be seeing happening on the very subtle human level, which Neptune is. And so as we start, we have to ask this question, so what is Neptune doing? What is it doing inside of the sign, and what is it doing to the sign? And to just a recap to begin with, first to remember is that the 3 outer planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, they're outer planets because we can't see them with our naked eye. And so metaphorically, that means that we can't see those parts of ourselves very accurately. We need to, to see them in the sky, you need to have a telescope, you need to have an extra instrument. So these subconscious forces within us, we have to work harder at identifying how they're subtly working within us. We don't have as much control over them as we do with the 7 visible planets, which are the planets of our conscious awareness. So we have less awareness of what they're doing within us. So those 3, Uranus is the planet of creation, bringing new things into our life. Pluto is the planet of destruction, things that are taken away from us, and then having to redefine who we are because of something that was lost. And Neptune in the middle is the planet of change. So you have creation, you have regulation, Neptune, and then you have destruction, and there's a cycle within that. So you can think of Neptune on a really simple level as this planet of changing what has already been created, and at the same time is not being destroyed. So I like to kind of think about Neptune as, in a way, like a black hole, where a black hole and Neptune is when Neptune is affecting something, it's concentrating all of the energy into the attempt to experience one thing as completely as possible, pulling everything into, like in a black hole, in the way that everything gets concentrated into one area. Because Neptune wants to, quote unquote, have something as completely as possible. And so we engross ourselves in that experience, and we can lose sight of a lot of other considerations in our life because we want something so completely. Whether that's a planet that Neptune's transiting over, it's a sign that it's in, or it's a house cusp. So this aspect of our subconsciousness, it wants total emotional fulfillment from the thing it's affecting, but it can never have that completely. We can't have total fulfillment from one single thing in life. Life is a variety of experiences. And what this does, what Neptune is famous for doing, is creating this sensation of a deep yearning and longing for the thing that it's affecting. And the black hole metaphor, I use that because as something is gravitationally pulled and concentrated into one area, eventually that thing becomes dissolved and destroyed. But Neptune doesn't exactly destroy the thing. It still exists, but it's the essence of something dissolving in meaning. Because as we're seeking complete emotional fulfillment from a sign, we're becoming so entranced by it that eventually it becomes dissatisfying. It's like as if you ate the same food for 6 months and you've tried a lot of varieties, but it's essentially the same thing. Eventually, you wanted to give you, I only need to eat this one thing in my whole life and I'll be fine. Eventually it becomes dissatisfied. You're seeking total nutritional fulfillment from one type of food. And eventually you just don't want it anymore. It's unsatisfying, but you are focused on it for a very, for a very specific reason, but that concentration eventually makes it less enjoyable, which is kind of contradictory because you are seeking enjoyment, or you're seeking to, quote unquote, again, have that thing as much as you could. And eventually it just becomes something that you don't even find. You want more variety in your life. And that singular focus just becomes obsolete. And so Neptune is also really well known for creating illusions, false ideas, because you can't have complete fulfillment from a single thing in life. And so that discontent eventually sets in. And so Neptune, I said that it's a planet of focusing in on something that you really want, and a deep desire to have a profound experience, or to have a complete experience from something. But at the same time, in that finding a complete experience, it's constantly morphing that single thing to try to make it perfect. So that's why it's a planet of change. So it's this concentration of focus and trying to modulate and affect that thing in as many varieties as possible. It's like if you ate only hamburgers for a whole year, and you tried every variety of hamburger to try to find the perfect one, but eventually you're just sick of hamburgers. So it's attempting. So when we're talking about in a sign, Neptune is trying to have a total experience of that sign as much as possible, eventually becoming dissatisfied by it, because we can't get complete satisfaction from material things in our life. Eventually we have to seek a spiritual path. And so Neptune is also this planet of spirituality, of finding a way to get over our obsessions and illusions, and see that there's more beyond wanting complete fulfillment from something that exists in the material world. So it has the higher level, the higher resonance of what Neptune does is through that process of trying to have something completely, seeing that it can never be complete, and then be able to move beyond it and see the bigger picture. And eventually that picture can be more spiritual fulfillment, and to not focus oneself so much on the finite aspects of a thing, and in this case a sign, the fleeting and temporary things that are always going to be changing, that you just become tired with, and you seek something that's more permanent, which is a spiritual connection to the world. So the modulations and changes that Neptune's doing, it's pushing universal consciousness, so everybody, to connect with a sign as deeply as possible, and wanting to have that sign as deeply as possible, and as comprehensive understanding of that thing as possible. But through that, it creates this despondency with it, and we can't have complete fulfillment from that thing in totality. And so what we're talking about really is an imbalance. If you have this constant focus on one thing in the material world, and diving into that experience, seeking a deep connection with it, it's going to result in dissatisfaction and despondence and a sense of discontent with that thing, because the material world is always in flux. And what we need to do with that imbalance is that whatever sign Neptune is in, it's calling us to actually go to the opposite sign to find a healthier way to understand that thing that Neptune is trying to experience so fully. So as long as we're not achieving and seeking the opposite of the sign that Neptune is in, there's going to create this dissolution and eventual discontent with that sign. But it needs a complement, and that complement is the opposite sign from Neptune. And another way that we can really see how Neptune operates is if we separate all the 12 planets into groups of threes, and if you go down the row of, use it as a column, these are other mathematical relationships between the planets, and they resonate with one another. So it's basically going from the most surface to the deepest level. So the moon, which is the first layer, and then the second layer is Jupiter, and then the third is Rahu, and then finally Neptune. So you're going to be able to contemplate the relationships and the similarities between these four planets, and you're going to be able to understand how Neptune is basically combining those influences into what it is. So first, the moon, it's the desire to connect to something outside of ourselves in order to feel loved and to feel connected with life. It has this yearning to be a part of something bigger. And then you have Jupiter, which is about expansion of knowledge, and especially spiritual knowledge, in order to create a purpose for oneself and one's life path, about this self-education, psychological self-education, in order to expand one's knowledge. And then you have Rahu, which is the planet of karmic inexperience, what we're basically born in life to experience, which we have no experiences of. And since we don't have experience in something from past lives, we have false ideas and illusions about it. And we're bound to make mistakes wherever Rahu is. So Rahu is this planet of, I don't really know how this works, and I'm just going to throw myself into that and figure out how it works, trial and error, and kind of diving into something with abandon. And, there's an obsessive quality, an extremist quality of Rahu. And then that's bound to, be out of balance and making mistakes. And that can be a really profound learning experience as well. And so when you combine these influences of these planets, you can understand Neptune. And again, contemplate this resonance table. You can find a lot of really fascinating aspects to it. But the one key takeaway as we go into the Neptune's transits and to understand Neptune, the past Neptune in Pisces and Neptune in Aries, is that the significations of the signs that Neptune is in, there becomes an extreme focus in order to achieve a sense of fulfillment from that sign alone. And it happens on a personal and societal level. So you have this desire to connect with something, the moon. You want to expand your understanding of it and to amplify your ability to comprehend it, which is Jupiter. But you have this elusive part, these illusions that can be created because of the obsessive need to have and understand that sign, that illusions are created. So then you get Neptune. And what we have to do is get beyond that obsessive desire to connect and expand with knowledge about a sign by looking at that opposite sign. And only through going to that opposite sign will the Neptunian experience be more healthy, because we can't dive into one thing, expect complete fulfillment from it. So that extreme focus on a sign will create dissatisfaction and a longing to have that sign to feel complete. And eventually gets dissolved. That sign will be dissolved in importance, more nebulous, and it can be easy. We can easily get lost in that sign. We're going to really see how this is an important factor, is that especially in the era of Pisces, which will happen in this era of Aries as well. But we lose ourselves in certain ways. We've lost ourselves in Piscean ways. This can only be rectified by Virgo and doing more Virgo things as a complement to the obsessive attempt to understand everything Pisces, in order to have a more healthy and balanced way of a Neptunian experience. So again, as I mentioned, Neptune's going to be having this effect over any planet that it's transiting over in your chart. So if you have Neptune, say, transiting over Jupiter, the person's going to be having this deep longing to connect to their creative self, to connect with children, to wealth and prosperity, or gaining wisdom. And that obsessive focus will eventually turn into illusions and false ways of thinking about it. And in the case of Jupiter, that, say, children will give you a total and complete fulfillment, or as having as much money as possible is going to give you complete fulfillment. So the singular focus becomes an illusion and dissatisfying, because it's only one aspect of human experience. And we're meant to have experiences in all types of aspects of life and not just fulfillment from one thing. So that's a general overview of the characteristics of what Neptune is doing in our lives and what it's doing. It's a really fascinating kind of subject to think about how Neptune is actually working. And we have to understand that to see, to identify what happened in Neptune and Pisces. And so then what can we expect understanding Neptune and then understanding Aries? What changes are going to happen in society and changes within ourselves? And it's going to be a big shift. Pisces and Aries are two completely different signs. But stay tuned. The next video, we're going to really dive into a lot of, say, some controversial things. But as you could have probably guessed, the era from 2011 to 2025 was a time of massive change. And we can also expect more massive change going into the current era we're going into from 2026 until 2039. So there's a lot. That's a long period of time. But the subtle effects that Neptune is having, it's going to morph society in a totally different way and morph ourselves in hopefully a healthy way. So stay tuned for those next videos.